This is the iPhone XR, and I've been using it for 48 hours now. So I know I'm a little late to the iPhone XR game, but I just finally picked it up, and I've been very excited to use this device because supposedly it's almost just as good as the XS and XS Max, but it is available at 25% less compared to the XS. So definitely intrigued me. So after spending 48 hours with it, these are my thoughts on it. The way this phone is amazing. It just feels perfect in the hand. The XS Max to me just feels a little bit too big. It's quite a lot heavier as well, and you can just feel that. After a while, it really starts to get old to me. The weight of the XS Max and the gargantuan size is just, I'm starting to feel a little bit tired out with that phone. I think the XR is the perfect size right now. It's not excessively big and heavy. However, it does give you a nice large screen and a lot of the advantages of having a larger phone, such as the battery life, which I'll talk about later on. Next, the one thing that people seem to be very, initially when this phone was launched is people called the screen depressing. There's a lot of, chatter about why this is not worth it, how Apple could, scam people out of $750 for only a 720p display. Technically, it's not a 720p display. It's higher than 720p. It just isn't 1080p. So it's in the middle there. But the thing is, resolution doesn't say everything. A lot of it comes down to PPI, pixels per inch, as well. So pixels per inch is similar to what it was on the iPhone 4, but that doesn't mean that the screen is the same quality as the iPhone 4. It is definitely improved. The colors on this look great. The panel is amazing, and there's a lot to like about it. In fact, to be very honest with you guys, while I was using apps like Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, what else? There was a few other apps, even the iPhone settings apps and all those inbuilt apps, I could not tell that this was a lower quality display. It just does not look lower quality than the XS and XS Max. Now that's honestly because the size of these phones, the size of these screens now, they're so big that you're not looking at them this close. You have them a decent space away from you. So that means that those pixels, they don't really seem apparent at all. And you can only tell if you bring them very close up to your face, which nobody does. Everybody uses their phone from a distance, at least a foot or so, I'd say. And you just got to think about it that way. And the display, I'm very honestly telling you guys, it's hard to see why it's supposed to be depressing, how it's bad. It's a very good display. The one thing I will say, though, is that I do miss OLED. Now, being used to OLED is a bad thing because you can never go back to LCD without noticing everything about it. So the blacks, definitely I miss the deep inky blacks, but otherwise all the other colors and the way the display works is amazing. It is definitely, without a doubt in my mind, better than the 1080p panel on the Pocophone F1 I use. So that just kind of goes to prove that having 1080p doesn't make the display better. Sometimes other things like the color quality, the accuracy, all those things, they really do matter a lot more than just outright pixels. Moving on, the one thing I do like about this phone is the design. It is so simple yet so elegant. It's not cluttered at all. The colors are very vibrant. That's not my cup of tea. I'm sure a lot of people love them, but for me, I do like a little bit more of a solid color, like something that's a little bit darker and under the radar. However, I did buy the product red, so I don't really know how much I can justify that. The thing is, the product red, the red and the black combination looks really, really good on the iPhone XR, and it looks good on every iPhone, to be honest. I was this close to picking up an iPhone 8 or 8 Plus in the product red, but for some reason I just didn't. I held out, and I'm glad I did because now I got to buy this phone, and it looks amazing. I love the red and black combo, and definitely the design is really good. If you have a black or white XR, it's really hard to even, it doesn't look like it's a cheaper iPhone anyway. Sometimes I know that the colors are kind of associated with being a little bit cheaper or not being that premium, but these colors, they're just really vibrant. That does give off that vibe. But the black and white one, they just look like normal iPhones. There's nothing that it doesn't stand out at all. In fact, a lot of people might even mistake it for an older iPhone in public if they don't know what they're looking for. So it is the design on the back very close to the iPhone 8. So if you have a black iPhone XR, I wouldn't be, if you just saw it from the back, I'm pretty sure a lot of people might confuse it with older iPhones. Now let's move on to the sound, the audio quality, the speakers. So the speakers are excellent on this phone. I had it beside my XS Max. I was doing a lot of testing. I used a sound meter. I used a lot of different metrics, and it was hard to tell which one is better. Both of them are about equal. The XS Max, since it is a little bit bigger, it does feel like the sound is wider from the same distance from you. However, the audio quality and the loudness just feels about the same. And my sound meter showed the same thing as well. The sound is almost identical. I think it was 99.9 decibels versus 100.0 flat. So that's within margin of error in my opinion. So definitely very, very close speakers, and that makes a lot of sense because they are the same speakers. But definitely something that you want to keep in mind because that's not a place that they compromised in at all. So performance. Performance is something a lot of people might be wondering about. And, Apple could have easily just stuck to the A11 Bionic from the iPhone 10 and not worried about it, and it would have been still an excellent phone. But Apple gave us the A12 Bionic and the 10R, same ones that come in the 10s and 10s Max, and the performance is ridiculous. I mean, there is not a single place where you can say, oh, the phone is laggy, or oh, performance isn't good. I can feel it stutter. Everything is buttery smooth. It works perfectly. And even though it only has 3 gigs of RAM compared to the 4 gig of the iPhone 10s, you will never notice it. Apple is so good with optimization that in a real life scenario, there's no way you will start to notice that your apps are closing down or that RAM is not enough. And talking about not making compromises, let's talk about that camera. So the primary camera and the front camera are both copied right over from the iPhone 10s and 10s Max. The one thing it is missing in terms of camera is the secondary telephoto lens on the back. Now, to be truthful, I don't use the telephoto lens a lot. I do sometimes, but it's not, as I said, if it was gone from my iPhone 10s and 10s Max, it wouldn't be something I would be too upset over. It's just I don't use it that much to justify it being there. So the 10R skipping out on that telephoto lens, I think makes a lot of sense because a lot of people don't use it, including me, as someone who uses their camera a lot for videos, photos, etc. So definitely something that not the world's biggest deal. I think that is a good place to cut a corner. It's a play, because otherwise camera quality is amazing. It is exactly on par with the 10s and 10s Max. I took a lot of photos to compare the two, exactly on par, and that makes sense. It has the same camera, same processor, same image processing. So the photo qualities are identical, and that's a very good thing because the iPhone 10s has excellent photo quality. And talking about all these things where compromises weren't made, one thing that I couldn't help but feel was that this just does not feel like a cheaper version of the 10s Max. I was using this last night, so this first day, end of the first day, and I was shocked because I honestly thought that I wasn't even thinking, and then suddenly I realized, oh my God, I'm actually using the 10R. It just doesn't feel like I'm using a different phone. It feels like I'm using the iPhone 10s Max because the experience is so similar. Not to mention that the display, the notch, everything looks so similar. And in the dark, it's even harder to tell that this has slightly larger bezels around the entire phone. I thought it would be intrusive at first. When I first saw it, I immediately noticed it. But as I started to use it a little bit, it's just kind of completely disappeared, especially once you put a case on it. Because when you put a case on it, there is a little bit of a lip, and that does hide the bezel a lot more. So all in all, I don't really think that there's that this is a cheaper version of the iPhone 10s. It definitely doesn't feel like it. That is what it is, but it doesn't feel like it in any sense of the matter. Now, the one thing I did kind of feel like there was one feature that I'm really missing, and I didn't even know how much I used it until I moved to this, and this doesn't have it. And I'm sure you guys guessed it, 3D Touch. So 3D Touch was something I used so much and never realized. I used it to edit text. So whenever I was typing, I wanted to go change something, I would just hard press on my keyboard and I could drag the cursor wherever I wanted, and that was it. I could easily edit text. Same way with a lot of apps. I got so used to force touching. So especially, say, settings app, if I wanted to go into the Wi-Fi or low power mode, I just hard press on settings, boom, there I was. A lot of things like that. So I could interact with a lot of things through 3D Touch that I'm actually actively noticing now. I didn't think I would, but I am. So that is something that I will keep in mind. If there is a 3D Touch version of a iPhone around, that's probably the one I'm going to stick to because that is very helpful, especially when I'm typing and I want to edit things. Now, the best part of this phone, hands down, and something that I was expecting but was blown away by is battery life. So I'm a very intensive user. The only phone so far ever to last me a full day iPhone has been the iPhone 10s Max. Every other phone just falls short. I have to charge a second time during the day. The 10s, 10R have been the only two iPhones, and I've used every iPhone since the iPhone 3G to get me through an entire day. That is amazing because think about it. The 10R and 10S don't have the world's largest batteries, but since they are so optimized, they easily give me great performance. Now the 10S Max was giving me 8 hours of screen on time, about 8 hours, 15 minutes. I think I got 8 hours, 30 minutes once, so 100 to a 0 charge. That was extremely impressive to me. I was shocked because I was never able to get that close. However, that was until I started using the 10R. And yesterday, I used the phone the entire day. I was blown away by the results. I had used the screen. So the screen on time was 8 hours and 19 minutes, I believe. And I still had 23% of my battery left. That was with Google Maps. That was with LTE, using the phone all day. Just normal data, exactly how I'd use my iPhone XS Max. I use the 10R. And oh my God, the battery life on this is just insane. I think that if for most people who are not very heavy users, so medium to light users, you're easily going to get 2 days out of this thing. I don't have a doubt in my mind because of how excellent the battery optimization and the charge lasts on this. So that is definitely something I cannot compliment enough. If you guys, the battery is the most important thing to you and you're sticking to an iPhone, buy the 10R, you will not regret it. So winding things down, the iPhone 10R is definitely a cheaper version of the 10s Max. However, as I said, it doesn't feel like a cheaper version of it. It feels like its own device, and that's a really good thing. Apple messed up with the 5C. They kind of made it a cheaper iPhone, very obviously, and people didn't like that. I personally didn't like that. I thought that was a wrong move. It turned out it was. And they killed off the iPhone 5C within a year. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know how the sales numbers, but in reality, I never saw too many of the 5Cs out in public. So I think it's safe to say that the 5C wasn't the best-selling iPhone by any measure. However, the 10R is definitely going to change that because the 10R doesn't feel like a cheap version of the iPhone, which was the most important step Apple took this time around. And at $750 compared to the $1,000 price tag of the 10s, I think it is hard to argue with this bargain because you're basically paying $250 for a second camera and an OLED display. Now that decision you have to make on your own. To me, it's worth it. The OLED display alone is worth the extra $250. However, I think that for 90% of the population, the general consumers out there, they're going to be just as happy with the 10R and not even notice the difference. And that's something I think that is amazing. So for me, right now, personally, I'd go for the 10s over the 10R. But the 10R is definitely what I recommend to everybody else. I'm not even sure, honestly, right now, which one I'm going to keep using after I'm done reviewing this phone because the battery life on this is so good. It's kind of like a catch-22. Do I go for the OLED screen or the better battery life? And I think I'm going to have to make that very difficult decision coming up into the next couple of weeks. So that rounds it off, guys. If you have any questions about the iPhone 10R or if you want to see anything in detail in a further review, please let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Happy holidays, and I'll catch you in the next one.